Hello everybody and welcome to round number 7 of the Tata Steel Chess Masters, the first super tournament of the year. We have one guy who normally participates in super tournaments, but we're very glad to have him with me actually in the studio. No one else is here. Peter Svidler, welcome.
Thank you. You're this intro kind of tells people you've known me for a while. 'Cause I haven't played in this particular tournament in close to 10 years, but
I didn't say in this tournament, I said in super tournaments. You're playing strong stuff all the time. Is that true actually? When was your last super tournament?
that is not part of the FIDE calendar.
I don't know.
I'm in 2014, I guess. Yeah.
You have one coming up, the Candidates Tournament, and that's the topic we're going to keep talking about. Some of the guys playing in this Tata Steel Masters are also playing in the Candidates, so you get a chance to watch your future rivals.
Yes, and disparage them, or not.
Yeah, no, I think the users, especially in Giri's case, will do the disparaging part for you. Let's have a look at what we got today. What do we have today?
We have a pairing at the top of the standings, Corona playing Ding Liren, and 6 other very interesting games. I think that's how we could describe today's round.
Let's describe it like that. Also, let's see if there's any complaints in the chat already. Let us know if you guys can see us. You can't see us now because we're on screen, but if you can hear us, if the sound is fine, all the good stuff.
Yeah, let's perhaps show the pairings. The pairings are on the screen right now. So, as you can see, I can't. I'm slightly stumped there. Yeah, Fabiano is white against Ding Liren on 4 out of 6. So that will be the game which potentially will determine who is leading the tournament. Sort of slightly past the midway point, and there are some games between people who can catch them up. Wesley So is playing VE, which should be interesting too. Of Wesley, how old is Wesley?
He's very young, like 21, 22. I'm always confused whenever I check how old all these guys are, how young all these guys are.
Yeah, but compared to VE, he's that's what I meant. I mean, he is very, very young and still in the beginning of his career, so to speak. But he is playing somebody who is 5 years younger than he is, so. Should be interesting to watch. And as you can see on the screen, an old Dutch pairing between Luc van Wely, who I was told yesterday is not actually Luc, so he's been pretending all his life. Not nice, Luc. Don't do that ever again. And between Luc and Anish, there's always something going on in the games between 2 Dutch players.
And Luc has mentioned before the tournament he's given up on his plans to become world champion, but he's still very motivated to defend his territory in Holland. He wants to finish as the best Dutch player. Score so far between them is 2-2 with a couple draws, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and lots of other stuff. And I think instead of introing forever about the 7 games, we should perhaps start looking at them at some point.
Okay. Before we do that, however, let's have a very brief look at the standings after round 6, if I manage to bring them up, which is like 30% proposition. Here we are. 3 players in the lead, Fabiano, Magnus, and Ding Liren, 2 of them playing each other. And that's all the intro we got. Let's get to the action. Magnus Carlsen, Elyanov. We have 1 d4, knight f6. Interesting position so far. What's the best move here? c4, bishop g5, knight f3?
Bishop f4, obviously, but Elyanov goes for 2 c4. He's a very classical player, and not one to dodge opening theory just for the sake of dodging opening theory.
Big Catalan expert. I'm a bit curious if he's going to try to get a Catalan where he beats Nakamura in the World Cup, if I recall.
Yeah, that was an impressive game, because it seemed to me that he got, well, to my untrained eye, pretty much nothing out of the opening, and then 5 moves later he was close to winning. So I'd be curious to see if he goes for some kind of Catalan. He goes knight f3. I think Magnus will play d5. Magnus generally plays either the Queen's Gambit or the Ragozin these days. So this is now the big turning point. G3 will indicate a desire to play. Well, it is the Catalan after G3. Or Elyanov could go knight c3 and try and prove something in those 2 openings. Well, either of the 2 openings, depending on what Magnus does.
Against knight c3, Magnus has a little bigger range. The Ragozin might be his favorite, but he's played plenty of Queen's Gambit.
Yeah, that's what
and semi-slow. Sorry.
That's what I said. Yeah, but Pavel does go g3. So yeah, this is curious, and will be interesting what Magnus does against the Catalan.
Yeah. I just released a new video series, which obviously I'm gonna plug endlessly on bishop e7 here, a repertoire for black, which I think is pretty decent. It was published, however, before Elyanov had that game against Nakamura. I might have to do an update. Some things always happen.
Things do happen, but bishop before check, I think these days is, I wouldn't say more popular, but very, very popular.
It's become very trendy, yeah?
Yeah, it's, I think, on level terms with bishop e7 by now, and we expect bishop d2, but whether Magnus goes bishop d6 or bishop e7 is...
He's capable of taking here. I'm not sure if he normally uses this move order, but I've seen him play this position many times without the bishop.
Sure, but I think it's... he doesn't overdo it anymore, but I think he still plays for, as... I don't know if the lively is the correct word, but he does go for positions which allow for double-edged play to emerge eventually. So in that respect, retreating with the bishop is slightly more interesting, and he does go bishop e7.
Yeah, the point of losing this tempo, as we've mentioned, this bishop on d2 is not always well placed. Many lines would rather be here, leave the square open for the knight. It indicates that black is looking for a close position, following up with c6, short castles, knight b7, b6, more often than not.
There's a great deal of theory connected with this line, obviously. There's some positions people start playing. Even in seemingly quiet lines, play seem to start around move 18 here. So.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll see what transpires in this game, but since we are still quite deep in theory, we could perhaps do a bit of a roundup of the other positions on the boards.
Absolutely. Magnus Carlsen up 2-0 in decisive games against Pavel Elyanov. Has never lost, has won 2 of them, and we'll see if Elyanov can catch up with him. Not catch up. Lessen the margin today.
Yeah. So what's happening in the top game of the round?
I'm actually very Giri.
Yeah, let's go for that. Let's go for that. Some kind of a Slav in which white decided not to allow black to take on c4 on move 4, playing instead the move 4e3, which is also, it's very major theory. Bishop g4 is also...
one of the 2 main moves, bishop g4, bishop f5.
Yeah,
Ding has played e6 here in this very tournament against Giri and others, but I like it less.
Yeah, there's also a6 hoping to transpose to some Chibanenko systems, but and g6 if you want to play the Schlechter. Black still has a wide choice, but bishop g4 is, very, very mainstream. And
what's interesting, h3 is the main move here.
Yeah, I'm slightly confused about whether bishop h5 or bishop takes f3 is the main move here.
No, bishop h5 nowadays is the main move. What's Like bishop f3 is a solid option, always playable. What's interesting here, Giri himself had this position with white against Vichy Anand in, I believe, St. Louis. He came up with sort of a new idea, because the main line here is what Luke has played, knight c3, e6, and then they tend to go g4. But Giri preferred this move immediately, and this had become reasonably trendy recently to go for this directly and leave the option open to put the knight on d2 in some lines. This plan with g4 might look a little strange, but it often has some very direct, violent ideas to follow up with h4, h5, harass his bishop.
Yeah, I'll leave this left to you. I'm not a huge expert on it. I used to play it, but we all know I tend to gravitate back to the Grunfeld from whatever distractions emerge. G4, bishop g6, and knight e5 has been played with the inclusion of knight c3, e6. This is very, very mainline theory. And knight b7, I think, knight g6, h takes g, and then something.
Yeah, the point here is white is threatening h4. This is the typical idea, and if you have to move this h-pawn to stop losing a bishop, you're in trouble. But knight b7 here, I believe it has turned out that h4 is well met with this strange move d takes c4. And because of the option bishop d3, there was nothing white could do directly. So theory has shifted a bit from h4 to, as you mentioned, knight g6, hg.
a3, I think they play here. They play almost any kind of a move, I think, has been tried here.
They've tried everything. g5 was discussed for a while, when as far as I know, knight e4 is fine for black, but that's always a topic. And a3, some strong Russian dudes have done this to stop bishop b4, and typically you get some...
I have a feeling maybe I played this once against Dinar Kiev in a rapid game with white.
So I count you as one of the strong Russian dudes.
I did it out of complete ignorance, of course. I knew in some positions they do this, so I thought, okay, this is a useful move which shouldn't blunder anything, so I made it.
Anish has played knight b7. Now let's see what Luki has prepared. Knight g6 or h4 are the main moves here. So I have a feeling when you said top game of the round, you might have meant a different game, the game Caruana against Dinglira, the co-leaders.
I'm actually quite curious about this, because this is a line I mention in my videos on the 6d3, and knight h4 is an idea I probably missed in this position. I'm not sure if it's refuting the line or not. We'll see in a moment, so to speak. But yeah, I have a feeling knight h4 is not mentioned in the videos because...
Let's plug your series properly. 6d3 is... nowadays almost as topical as Rook e1.
Yeah, arguably there was a period when it was more topical than Rook e1, because people gave up on trying to refute the Marshal and just switched to d3 as their main weapon.
If you're interested in this, playing it, especially with white, but with both colors, we happen to have a video series by Mr. Peter Svidler on Chess24, which covers all the main options for black in this position.
I tried being as extensive as possible, and after b5, which I believe in this position is perhaps the more principled move, although d6 is playable. d6, a3. I did actually recommend going knight a5 and c5 here before castling, and this has since been played. I played with myself against Veselin Topalov in Baku during the World Cup. In the same World Cup, I believe this has been played in the match between Vei and Ding Liren. I'm not quite sure about the colors. I have a feeling maybe Ding Liren was white in that game.
No, I think he played this with black.
Probably black, yeah. Probably black. And after knight a5, bishop a2, c5...
just to clarify here, knight a5 is a threat whenever you defend the e5 pawn. White has to do something about it. Carlsen sometimes goes c3, but the rest of the world goes a3 or a4.
Or a4, yeah. Generally speaking, those two are the two main options.
And yeah, castle's the main move, but the subtleties start with, can black save a tempo on this?
It's not exactly saving the tempo, it's just that the idea behind this is that c5 is generally a much more useful move for black than castles. And it's important to get it in before white can stop it by playing b4 and driving the knight back to c6. Therefore we go c5 here, and after knight c3 we immediately start fighting for the d5 square with bishop b6.
Is this a position where they also tried bishop e6? I believe there was
possibly, yeah, but I think starting with c5 makes sense as well. And I think the first top player to play this was actually Mickey Adams, who played it in... I think he told me in the London Classic 14 Blitz, what's it called? Drawing of lots. They had a Blitz tournament to determine the the starting numbers, and I think he played it in the London Chess Classic in 14. And then there were at least 2 top games in the Baku World Cup, and there have been top games since. But knight h4, I do not believe I have seen before, and this is curious. I'm very interested in what will transpire in this game, because I would very much like to for this line to stay healthy, if simply for the reason that I want my recommendations to survive.
So in this position,
Castles just transposes to what you could get previously, but yeah, after knight
the
d5.
difference is here white goes knight d5, right? And you
Yeah.
can't chop it off twice. When okay, this is still theory, but the point is after bishop e6, knight d5. Now you can take.
Yeah, I can
probably
take
with
with
the knight.
with a knight, yeah, and if e d5, the bishop can go either to g7 or to g4. To g4 is actually even more ambitious, because this pin is actually quite uncomfortable for white. It's not that easy to unpin himself comfortably. And if bishop d5, we take twice, we castle.
This was a game, right? Maybe Anand Dingliren even?
Maybe, yeah. And yes, after
Takes.
b4 the knight will have to go to b7, but the structure in the center is very, very comfortable for black. So he can afford to be mildly discomfited by placing his knight in a non-ideal position. You could also, maybe after bishop takes d5, go something like rook c8, but I think taking is fine.
So Fabiano has done his homework, as he tends to do, and he's come up with a fresh idea, knight h4. Where does he want to go? Here.
Yeah, the 2 main ideas, of course, are knight f5 if conditions allow, or perhaps f4 in some positions.
So if I'm primitive and I try to stop all this, is he in time to go, like, take some bishop h6?
Maybe, or the immediate bishop h6, but also f4 is kind of worrying me a little bit. Let's cover the more basics, so to speak. Can we take on e4 in any addition at all? Like, immediately I think we'll run into bishop takes e6, and we probably will not enjoy it very much. Although knight c3 might be a move. fe6, queen h5 check looks very dodgy. Although, yeah, g6, knight g6 is bad, but maybe we can go king d7. But you don't really want to do this with black. It feels like you're inviting trouble. For just one pawn, you already have a king on d7 with a very unstable structure. So that's not very good. But what if we start with taking on h2? White probably takes with the rook. We take on e4.
Maybe we just go long term, not de queen g4 or mid term.
Very possibly. But there's also knight f5 followed by... Yeah, I thought maybe I could make knight takes g7 work, but I'm no longer sure about this, because the queen is hanging, and the queen is a very powerful piece.
That's what people tell me.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if I can go something like queen g4 here, but it seems a bit fanciful. Queen c8. No, queen c8, knight f5. Yeah, knight e2 checking h1. Yeah, but if the bishop on c1 is taken, that my main idea is diffused. I wanted, of course, to put the bishop on h6. No, but yeah, it looks very risky to take on e4. There's also maybe knight takes e4 and queen g4 might be awkward for black. d4, as you mentioned, followed by queen g4, knight d5, and positional compensation might be awkward.
Yeah, there's also, in a way, the practical dimension. If Corona blitzes out knight h4, obviously he's checked all the attempts to grab his pawn.
Yeah, but it's not our game, so we can afford to discuss possibilities. Yeah, if I were black in this position, I wouldn't spend more than about 30 seconds on discussing whether I want to play knight takes e4. That is absolutely true.
This looks very dangerous. Oh no, bishop h6, worst case scenario. You take here.
Yeah, knight d6 black is not really worse. I will take on d6, bring my knight over to d4. I would probably pick black if I had to pick a side. But bishop h6, bishop f6, f4, for instance, looks kind of scary. Still is not mate. I can play king h8 here. No, if this were, if I were analyzing this position at home, in the safety of my home laboratory, so to speak, I would definitely invest some time in figuring out if I can take this pawn, because if black can take this pawn, it might solve all of his opening problems on the spot. But yeah, in a practical game, you probably play either castles or knight c6, I think, more than g6. g6 looks a bit inviting.
It's also scary.
Yeah, it looks a bit inviting.
I was just wondering, in general, in this structure, if white goes knight f5 immediately, if we take here, we have to do something, right?
g4, g5, g4, g5 is a very, very fast plan here. Yeah, so this is why I wanted to perhaps start with knight c6, so that we are not committed to doing this as early as this. Yeah, knight c6, but still knight f5 seems very, very playable. Takes, And knight g4 will be met very comfortably by g4, I believe.
D5 looks
G5,
never in time, like
yeah,
bishop G5.
Bishop g5 puts a lot of pressure on the black center here. You could try playing c4 here, but I think it will end up being very good for white.
Yeah, this looks very loose.
Yeah.
It takes.
You might actually have to play your g6 move, but then some very careful consideration has to be given to the move bishop h6, as you correctly pointed out.
So yeah, we have a new chapter in the theoretical discussions of the Spanish. We keep a close eye on it, and it looks like certainly Fabiano Caruana is not hiding any novelties for the candidates. He thinks this is a big game. They're the co-leaders. He's playing his main idea.
It is a very, very important game in the context of that tournament. And yeah, knight h4 seems like a very valid idea. I perhaps should have considered more closely when doing my homework for the videos, but...
One day after you're done with this candidates tournament, then maybe we'll talk about getting some updates for the videos, because theory develops and all the lines.
Absolutely, yeah. As evidenced by the fact that I played this line in the quarterfinal of the World Cup, I do believe in my recommendations and I play them all the time. But theory it does not stand still, and updates will have to be recorded at some point to most of the stuff which is published by now.
Speaking of theory, how good is your open Spanish?
I played this line very recently against Shahmamedjarov in the Reykjavik European teams, and he made a forced draw against me, blitzing out. I mean, we both had the final position in our file, I think, and I was kind of hoping he would not remember what he's supposed to do there, but he did remember, and the game wasn't particularly, exciting for either of us. Sometimes you go, at this level in a match where we felt we were doing very well in the tournament, we were ahead, we won all 4 matches previously, and we felt that taking huge risks on board 1 was not necessary. So I played a line where if he doesn't know theory, if he doesn't remember theory, we'll get a little bit of something, but if he does know theory, it will be a forced draw, and it was a forced draw. Sometimes, opening theory in some lines has progressed so far that you occasionally might have to make such choices.
Sounds like a great choice to me. Semi-bluff.
Yeah.
Anyway, the position they have on board, this is one of the main lines, right, which has been discussed.
No, I think this is the main line of the Open these days.
Right now. Yeah.
Most of the serious discussion is centered around this position. You're not on your cartoon game today, yeah?
No, I am. I'm just secretly preparing to bring up the right cartoon so people can see it. Wei Yi, only game those guys ever played was lost by Wei Yi or won by Wesley So, but it's been a while back in the, I believe, Reykjavik Open 2013, when Wei Yi was probably around 13 as well. So,
sounds
different guy now.
Right, yeah. There's a tremendous amount of theory starting from this position. White plays... when I just started looking at this, which was ages ago, and I actually lost a very painful game to my former second, Alexander Motorov, in one of the Russian superfinals in the mid-aughts, I was told to call this decade. It was centered around the idea to play bishop e3 and bishop d4 as early as possible and try to sort of round up this d3 pawn and pick it up, but it never actually works for white properly. So these days they kind of ignore the pawn altogether for a while, and they play rook e1, bishop f4, b4, h3 in all kinds of orders. You can combine these moves whichever way you like. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. You do tend to make all of these moves in some order. And then you play, strangely enough, for the e6 push. You try to play h3, g4, drive the bishop away from f5, and then you play bishop a2 and push for e5, e6. And black tries to do something against this.
Yeah, there's a lot of theory in this line. The latest high-profile game I can remember is Caruana against Giri, which was a curious choice by Giri, because Caruana plays this line himself, and they actually, in this very tournament, they also had an open Spanish, albeit a different line. How do you pronounce the word? Albeit? I'm always
albeit,
very confused. I think they're both valid, but I try to go for an awkward mixture. So yeah, I'm not up to date here. I tried to once make this work for black. I couldn't fully. The computer gives some advantage for white, but clearly strong players like this. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Once again, my one per day apology for looking left every now and then. England are finally batting, so I will be keeping an eye on that, but can't stop it.
I'll be keeping an eye on Navarra Kayakin. Looks like a sharp, or not really sharp, but a theoretical battle in the semi-Slav, which is very close to my heart.
Well, I'll just. Can I stay silent for like 5 minutes while you expound on the?
I don't know that much here, but yeah, I'll get in my chances in the opening to drop expertise, because later we're gonna have to think, and that's more your forte. Let's face it. So Queen C2 is still the trendiest line against the semi-Slav instead of the direct Bishop D3. Bishop D6 is what they do. Bishop D3, castles, castles. Here for centuries now, for years, we used to discuss these positions, now either A6 or B5 directly. But recently they've managed to slightly Berlinize the semi-Slav and play E5 here, which leads to forced simplifications, because practice has shown that all these isolated pawn positions are nothing. There was a recent game, Wesley So against Vichy in this position, but black is very comfortable because all the pieces get out so quickly, I believe. The game went like this, but white has nothing here, and Vichy had no problems to neutralize white's small pressure. So the main line is to open the center before black is fully ready, or that's the thinking behind it. But here theory has also advanced a lot, and Anish Giri, for example, can make a draw here with his eyes closed and has done so a couple times.
Yeah, against MVL, I think they played a couple of games, maybe even more than one. One definitely before my eyes in the Khanty Grand Prix.
No, they had two almost identical games, that Khanty game and then the same game more or less in Norway chess. Giri later repeated it against Wesley So as well. We get this position, which looks like these pawns are the wrong color, but they're not.
Yeah.
The one plus white has is h7 is hanging, so black has to lose a tempo with h6. And in this position, they've tried pretty much every move. h3, knight takes d4, obviously, rook e1, b3. But nothing gets you very far. It's one of those, you look at it with the computer gives 0-30, you make a couple of normal moves, and then it's down to 0-10, and then they shake hands.
Yeah. It does feel like it's a position which should be very clickable for black to equalize, and the play is very, very concrete here. And people who work on chess, and Anish definitely is one of them, and Sergei is another. They do employ this with black with the aim of just making a forced draw pretty much.
Yeah. The main line here is, I believe, still knight takes d4, and then black goes for this move with a bit of a double attack. Knight f3, queen h5. White has been trying to make things happen in like some end games like this, but never really got very far. So they try.
Yeah, it's not sensational. Rook d1, I'm less aware of.
Rook d1 I'm also not fluent in. I did check some moves here like b3 or h3, but rook d1 is a bit of news to me. The obvious reaction, which I think was played in the game, would be knight to e5.
Yeah, and this actually has been played reasonably fast by Sergei, who is obviously right now preparing for the same kind of this tournament that I am, and is probably, even more booked up than he usually is in his openings. So knight e5 was played quickly and confidently, but he is now thinking somewhat later on in the game. Knight takes d4, otherwise I guess you just have nothing at all. You need to start, this pawn needs to be picked up for any hope of an advantage. Bishop g4 looks very natural, hitting the rook on d1 and winning time. Bishop b2, rook c8 hitting one more piece with a tempo, queen b3, rook e8. All of black's moves look, very, very normal and very natural. But now after bishop f4, Sergei is finally thinking. And you have to say, he does need to stay precise here. He is a pawn down, yeah. He is a pawn down, so if he sort of passes for a couple of moves, he might end up in trouble here.
Let's check the head-to-head score. Karyakin, I believe, he beat Navarra 3 times, only lost once, 4-2 overall. So he has a good score against David Navarra, but a pawn is still a pawn, so how can he get enough compensation here? I'm sure this is a computerized position.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certain David has looked at it carefully, but for Sergey, maybe this development is a bit of a surprise, or maybe he's trying to remember what his notes say, because his previous play, I think, was almost instantaneous.
Yeah, rook d1 is a very rare move, as mentioned, but if you go here directly giving the pawn, I'm sure he's looked at it as well.
Well, I don't want to hurry here, as seemingly bad things are happening on my other screen, so I'm momentarily distracted.
You check your cricket
No,
out.
I'm not.
Continue our opening tour.
There's something exciting going on one of the boards we can't see on our screen currently, so let's scroll up a little bit, and yeah, that is what people were mentioning. This is a game we touched on briefly earlier, but Magnus is doing something interesting there.
Yeah, all of this still mainline theory. Here, knight e4 is not the main move by any stretch of the imagination. They pretty much always play c6 followed by b6. But Magnus has a bit of a soft spot for these stonewall structures, which he's employed a couple times. Beat Vishianand with black in one of these stonewalls. Beat Caruana as well, I believe. So this idea to put a knight on e4 and go f5 seems close to his heart. But here, all of this looks normal. He didn't even play f5, he went g5.
Yeah, this is very, very curious. Let me just briefly check the timings on this. G5 has taken him 2 minutes, so...
No, he's blitzing. This is his preparation.
Yeah, this has to be still very much his preparation. So, very curious. I guess the idea is to follow it up by f5, but do not give White the control of the easy control of the e5 square. Pavel has retreated to e3 as...
Since it's not my pieces, just in passing knight e4, d4 wins a piece. I was briefly considering, like, if you can sacrifice it, but I don't really see enough
you don't have... I mean, there will be some positional compensation so that you're not immediately lost, but yeah, there's no attack on the king's side, so it's just a piece.
So you went here. There's often a problem in these structures. There's no ideal square for the bishop. On d2 it might get captured. c1 it blocks the rook's connection. And
yeah,
e3
c1 is a bit sad. Yeah, so yeah, bishop e3 is normal, but now I guess f5 will come, and it will be harder for White to control the all important e5 square. Black can play bishop f6 later on. Perhaps in some positions might think about some further push on the king side, g4 or f4. White's position is still very solid though, so it's not...
In the stonewall, he's gone knight c3 earlier for concrete reasons, but in many lines you actually prefer your knight on d2 once black is committed to f5, because then you have a better chance of fighting for this e5 square by ideally putting your knights on d3 and f3, 91,
93 is a very, very typical maneuver in this position. It's still, I think, on the cards here. It's still possible to do it, because I'm not sure black wants to play f4 very early.
No, the other typical plan in this very position, once you commit to knight c3, is to go for an attack on the queen side. I believe Boris Avruch recommended this in his book, probably even in this position, to go for rook b1 followed by b4 and a quick b5 to start some warfare there before black is fully coordinated.
When you say in this precise position, does that mean that g5 has been played before?
My guess is he's covered this position and he's covered g5, but I haven't looked it up, so feel free to look it up. But I'm reasonably certain he's given this plan with rook b1 and b4 here.
Does make sense, because you need to start some kind of active play somewhere, and at least for now, center and the king side seem to belong to black.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes, but this is gonna be a sharp fight, and Magnus, well, he always does this, but often in different ways. He's playing for a win with black by choosing a very, very strategically unbalanced position. I'm not sure we call it sharp.
This is very double-edged, and for me, these structures were very, very difficult to understand and difficult to play, and I'd be unsure as to what I'm supposed to do here. I guess more with white than with black, because with black your play is slightly more understandable because there's not that much available to you. You do need to get the c8 bishop somehow included in play, which probably involves playing b6 at some point.
It's always a very tricky part. In the past, Magnus in these structures, he's often, but that's without g5, gone for something like a5, then later bringing this knight here and bringing the bishop out here.
Knight f6 and bishop d7, bishop e8 is probably maybe the preferred way to do it, but having committed to f5 and mainly to g5, I think it's slower and harder to achieve because you don't really want to leave e5 unattended for too long.
Yeah. Just for the record, he's only played g5, bishop e3, but we're expecting f5. I don't see another sensible move.
Yeah, it would be very strange. Yeah, very strange to do this and then not play f5. Though he might prove us wrong yet again. We still have a lot of games we haven't touched at all, so let's...
Tomaszewski against Mickey, another of my favorite openings, which I'm still debating. I might make this the topic of the next part of my Black repertoire series. I've done the Catalan and the Vienna, which is knight f3, dc4. But if you don't want to play the Nimzo here, which is the main line, of course, and Mickey's played it countless times, then after d5 you have to deal with this stuff.
Or knight takes d5, which actually gained some popularity recently. cd5, knight takes d5, the old lines, and it has been played by very strong players recently. Vladimir Kramnik played it against me in the London Candidates actually. So it's very playable, but it leads to positions where Black, in many cases, will have to hold slightly unpleasant positions with very few winning chances. So
yeah, I've talked about this. You need to know too much and be too precise to make a draw here for my taste.
Not to everyone's taste, exactly.
This used to be considered pretty much just better for white, because in the old days in this position they used to play something like knight bd7, knight e2, short castles, rook e8, and queen c2, knight f8, and many people, Kasparov, but even earlier Botvinnik games, have taught us that white is better here with his long-term plan of f3, e4, grabbing the center. So this used to be considered a big problem, but some fresh ideas have emerged. One of the biggest to play knight h5 reasonably early to exchange this bishop.
This is what we will see in a moment here.
Mickey's gone h6. This is one of the big mysteries for me, because the sort of modern main line here is knight bd7, and against pretty much everything, knight e2 or queen c2, to play knight h5, and whether to include h6 or not is one of the big mysteries.
I wouldn't know. I have a feeling Dieter Nisipiano played this against me, maybe via a slightly different move order. I think I had this against Dieter in Baku a few months ago in the World Cup, and I eventually won that game with white. But whenever I have to play this, I feel like I'm just making moves. I have no idea, in which order they're supposed to be made, whether they are any good in the order I'm making them currently. But I mean, the structure is so sound that you're never very unhappy with white.
Yeah, no. Still, black has many other ideas, like in this position, bishop e6. No, I don't think it's in this position. Bishop e6 followed by knight bd7 is popular without bishop e7.
Bishop g4 maybe, although maybe not in this particular position.
No. But here, after you committed to h6, now Mickey goes knight bd7, queen c2, knight h5. He's done this before. And basically, black's plan is sort of primitive. You want to exchange these bishops. Of course, bishop g3 you would take sooner or later. Then put the knight on b6, go bishop e6, castle queenside, go king b8, and ask white, what are you planning to do? f3, e4 is not very realistic most of the time, and minority attack is possible, but also not easy to do, and black is just saying, you know what, I have a very solid position, I have plans, I can go g6, knight g7.
But it has to be pointed out that you generally castle queenside once white has castled queen.
Yeah, that's fair. Black waits to commit his king before white is shown.
Yeah, and actually Magnus does not go f5. Let's just briefly show that we were wrong about this.
Very briefly.
Yeah.
Oh, and I should have seen this coming. This is funny because just yesterday, I believe, I recorded a video with Artur Yusupov on a game played by Levon Aronian against Anish Giri in the Olympiad in 2012, where Levon employed the exact same maneuver. It wasn't the same position, but very, very similar, by queen on b3 and a5, a4 included. He went knight e4, then g5, and knight d6 to go to f5. So Magnus taking a page out of Levon Aronian's playbook here, and they've worked together, which was a bit of news at the time because they're both strong players, or world-class players, obviously, and many times, like the super elite, they are not working together because they don't want to share ideas. But they've had a camp at the very least before St.
Yeah,
Louis.
we don't know if it was just this one time to kind of recharge their batteries before Sinquefield Cup, or whether it's anything more, stable. But yeah, that one time did happen. It was very publicized, all the dolphin racing and everything. If you've seen the videos,
I have.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Yeah,
96.
things you can never unsee. I think it follows under that category.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
96, yeah. Direct move attacks this pawn. If c5, knight f5 is a little awkward, I would guess, because you don't want to give up this bishop, and here g4.
Yeah, it doesn't seem particularly comfortable for white. I would actually consider maybe forcing black to win this pawn.
That was another question, b3 maybe.
But knight f5 might still be interesting against both of those moves, actually. No, I was thinking more about b3. If black just takes twice, we play bishop c1, and I think we do get at least potential for very decent positional compensation for the pawn.
I agree, but I don't think that's his idea. Because
probably
here
not.
g5 just looks too far away from home. Pawns never move back, in case you've never been told. So here this just looks ridiculous, and yeah, I'd take white in a heartbeat. But b3 knight f5 is a different story, no?
Yeah, because once again, if you retreat with the bishop, g4 will be very awkward, because d4 is not the pawn you want to lose. c4 you don't particularly care about, but d4 is an important pawn you want to keep.
Yeah, also here black keeps the structure intact.
Yeah, precisely. So yeah, we should have seen this coming.
You can
somehow.
do this and then, I don't know, play some move like queen d3, but whenever you have to give up this bishop, even...
Yeah, it feels a bit slow.
Although, even if black did this. Good.
No, I mean, with the pawn on g7, I'd be extremely happy with black here. With the pawn on g5, it's playable for white, but yeah, it doesn't feel the most critical.
The bishop goes here, and yeah, black seems okay.
Yeah, but b3 is tempting, because taking on d5 just doesn't feel that exciting. You're making the bishop on c8 much happier about its prospects immediately, and
I'd still consider it. You probably got to go cd, right? Because
Why?
ed, then this knight can no longer jump here, which would make me much happier. Not sure what I'd do.
I mean,
with
once
that.
again, with the pawn on g7, this is a structure they sometimes get to in the... There's a weird line in the bishop f4 queen's gambit where they play knight b8, knight b5 at some point, forcing knight e8, and then the knight via e8, it comes to d6, and then black plays f5. So yeah, I think it goes. You need to do this with the knight on g1. I think you're not going to get it here, or maybe you can get it here. Yeah, something like this. Yeah, cd5, ed5. Yeah, these moves are not maybe the most precise move order for both sides, but yeah, this is a structure I meant. And sometimes black just plays f5 here and acts completely unconcerned about the e5 square, feeling that his very solid structure on the queen side and the control over the e4 square compensates well enough for it. So
yeah, still your pawn is on g5. So after cd, ed, I'm not buying this. Not sure how to punish it, but let's say I go here. At the very least, it gets very messy.
yeah, I'm not saying this is excellent for black, but it's an option, because cd, I would probably feel that now white at least has, some avenues of play. Still probably.
It's still annoying.
Yeah, it is annoying.
G4 idea, like you can play some rook to d1, but it doesn't feel very active. And I don't know, position like this, okay, I understand. My pawn is dumb, but
the knight on d6 is excellent, and yeah, bishop b7, rook c8. Curious idea, and Pavel plays b3, which is very commendable, because it is an actual pawn sacrifice. So did not take him too much time to not simplify black's life by settling the structure in the center. Very curious whether Magnus wants to take on c4, go knight f5, or maybe make some third move we haven't mentioned yet.
pretty sure knight f5 has to be the idea after you've gone g5. I don't think you can just pretend it never happened and play b6.
No, but d takes c4 is not as bad as you've described. I mean, it's...
I think it's horrible.
You really think it is so bad? I don't know, takes, play g4.
Also, might
I don't
go
think
all
I don't think it
tactical
works.
here. I'm not sure it works.
Takes.
But,
Yeah, I don't think it works. I checked it briefly. Knight a3, followed by bishop b7.
yeah, missed knight a3. Okay. Can't do that. But hang on.
You can take, they go knight e4, but I think I can play
Queen b5.
queen b5 or maybe knight a3 again, actually. Even the same idea might actually work here. Knight a3 followed by queen e7 then. So...
Too much, but bishop c1, I really, really dislike this. Oof.
Yeah, g4.
Even if I play.
No, I understand, but let's say I go knight d6, or maybe e5 immediately. But yeah, let's bring it back. Knight d6. If you go e4, I will play e5, and well, it's a pawn. My king is somewhat weakened, but I'm not getting mated just yet, and your pieces are somewhat far away from it, so it's not unplayable, but it feels like it's an un-Magnusy thing to do. Let's put it like this.
I'm even wondering about going here.
All the moves are reasonably sensible here. 92 is not out of the question. White will always have long-term compensation for this pawn. I'm just making an argument for this being playable. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough. Let's see what the world champion comes up with, but already very high stakes after a couple moves. Which
yeah, sure. Let's have a look at some of the. I think we have 2 games we've haven't
ignored some things.
Yeah. Mainly we've ignored the game between Shakhryam Mamedjarov and Hoi Fine, which is a travesty.
We've also ignored our cartoons, which is an even bigger travesty because, as you guys have probably realized by now, we are not the official broadcast. We don't have video from onside. This is a Chess24 operation. So all we got is our very pretty faces, Peter Svidler's chess knowledge, my knowledge of movies, and these cartoons, if I can bring them up, which is like a very 50-50.
I don't know if anyone noticed me nodding sagely at your mention of pretty faces, but that's what I have just done, and I'm slightly ashamed of myself.
Of your face?
Of nodding to you saying that.
Okay.
Anyway, how did they get here? It was a Ragozin.
Ragozin.
Yeah.
Queen a4 check, not the main line, but always a move to keep in mind, forcing knight c6, which computers want to play in any legal position all the time, but most humans don't like to block their c-pawn. Therefore, white is ready to invest some time with the queen to force this.
Yeah, but I think Yakovenko played 95 in this position in a Grand Prix game against who was it?
I don't know, I've seen the game. You sure it was here? Because this is some very old
and
analysis. Bishop
he
d7.
took on d7 and went, I think maybe even a3 or something, or e3 and followed by queen c2. He beat somebody good in Hante.
Giri, was it?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that was against Anish. I'm not sure he played a3 and not e3 here, but that was a reasonably recent game in which some kind of new life was, White attempted to breathe new life into queen a4 check. But e3 is, the old-fashioned way of dealing with this.
That's the traditional line, e3 castles. Now the queen decides it has done its job. Her job on a4 goes to c2. Black no longer has c5, so he switches plans, or she switches plans in this case, to going for the e5 push. Many subtleties here if you want to start with dc, if you want to start with a6, if you want to start with whatever. But Hou Yifan plays the most direct move, bishop d6. Provoking c5, which we've seen played recently, I believe, some game. Bakro Aronian maybe, where white goes for some slow expansion here. Levon in such a position just went knight b8 back, then played c6, b6, knight b7, and held quite comfortably.
I would consider this to be quite promising for white. If black actually needs to go knight b8 here after a3, I would probably play this.
I'm not sure if he's done it directly, I just remember how it roughly went. Here, I'm not sure if you're even time b6, a5 or whatnot.
b5?
Probably you are, yeah.
I think I am on time here. Yeah, If we're talking about the same game, I think Lev actually won it eventually after Etienne overpressed and blundered. But Etienne was better the whole game. This I remember. It's probably...
Game, I mean, was a draw, but...
Okay.
Look it up out there. I'm also not sure about the move order. I'm talking about some game from, I think, Grenke Chess Classic in
Oh, no,
2015.
that's a different one then, yeah. Because they also played some kind of a structure like that in Reykjavik, I believe. And that one Etienne was better in for large parts of it, but then he made a series of unfortunate mistakes in time trouble and lost, I think.
Mamedyarov, yeah, not the type to close a position. C5, I'm not sure. Check it out. Check the database on Chess24 if you feel like H3, one of the main most typical move, waiting for DC4. You don't want to move the bishop B4.
It's curious that how he finally decides that to comply immediately, because there's a great number of waiting moves black can also make here before taking on C4.
Thing is, if you play A6, which is a
Yeah,
typical
C5,
waiting
yeah.
move, then this becomes a topic, I believe.
Should
Because it's not ideal for most of these positions to have your pawn here. Now, whatever, rook B1 or A3.
Yeah, I agree with this. Yeah, sure. So DC4, bishop C4, E5, castles A6, all fairly normal for this variation. Moves you will probably need at some point. So both sides are quietly improving their position. A3.
Yeah, this is the old Karpov
Yeah.
double flank pawn advance H3, A3, just prophylaxis against potential B5s, knight A5. The bishop wants to go back, controlling the G4 square. All pretty standard, and I wouldn't be surprised if after ED, we're transposing to some completely different openings, like some exchange French or whatever.
Very, very possibly. But I think as black, you want to postpone or avoid doing this for as long as possible, because the bishop on C1 is currently the one piece white would very much like to be more active, and giving it the G5 square just feels wrong.
It's typical play, that's I guess something like H6, Rook D1, Queen E7.
Although after Queen E7, D5 becomes slightly stronger, because I think generally you want to play Knight E7 after D5. So yeah, issues for black to decide on somehow, but a typical position for, you would say, many openings. You get positions like this sometimes out of the Queen's Gambit accepted as well, so a reasonably typical structure, but a very interesting structure. I played it a couple of times in my life, and it's quite interesting to analyze and interesting to play.
We have some questions in the chat, like, I'm not following the challenges, some questions about the challenges. We might do a tour later on, but it's 7 games in the Masters. It's so much, we hardly can follow all of those. So let's get to another question. Where does Paul Borta come from? That's your Twitter handle.
Not again.
It's been answered too many times?
Yeah.
I don't know, though.
I think I will have to maybe include a line in all the profiles everywhere.
Please do.
Yeah, but not right now. And it's a billiards term. Seriously, I can't really bring myself to go into the whole spiel as to what it actually stands to.
We will never know. Sorry.
It's a Russian billiards term. It's searchable.
Go premium if you want an answer to that question. Dinu Sergiu Andrei.
Yeah. Curiously, in the Wei versus Saw game, Wei did go for the old way of treating this position. This is supposed to be nothing at all, as far as I could remember.
He's played bishop e3.
Yeah, he went for the old plan of bishop e3, bishop d4, and I think they just play d2 here these days, don't they?
I'm not very booked up. D2?
I have a feeling d2 is supposed to be close to a forced draw, first and foremost. Rook f d8 I'm less aware of.
Being the renowned attacking player I am... this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I don't think... No, it makes sense, but I don't think it works in this particular position.
What
Let's put it like this, yeah.
Because if I got some time here, I'd be happy, but I guess you can just...
I'd probably take and then do something clever, like queen takes b3, which is a very sophisticated, clever move.
Yeah, not enough. I don't know, d2 I'm not familiar with, but...
I have a feeling this is the position where they go d2, or maybe it's
one
move
later.
later.
After b4 maybe something.
No,
like
it's
that.
very important that you meet queen takes d2 by taking on b1 and taking on b3. So it has to be with the pawn on b3. But whether it's in this position or in some position with the inclusion of h3, I'm not sure.
Let's answer simpler questions. If you take on d3, you just grab b3 and you're happy.
No, black tends to be very happy about this, especially if he is in time to return to e6. If he's in time to return to e6 with the queen, stopping all kinds of shenanigans on the king side, I think black is already slightly better. I would pick black, because white's pieces are severely restricted by his own pawn on e5. To such an extent that actually in this position the first move that I would start analyzing in the position you just left would be 5e6 followed by something.
Right.
No, anything.
Not this one.
Yeah.
This one.
Just go e6, fe6 and something would be my first instinct. Probably queen e4, and probably it will end up being some kind of an endgame which will be close to equality, and once again probably slightly better for black. So yeah, I don't think bishop takes d3 is particularly critical.
Yeah, and I would guess I would have to look up the theory. You guys can do it as well and let us know, #C24Live or in the Chess24 chat. I have a feeling a3 was the move here, but I could be very wrong. Because if I go b4, can I go bishop g4?
Before bishop takes b4 could be
Oh, just take it.
Yeah, well, bishop a2 might be a problem there. I'm not sure. Queen somewhere, and then we start trying to calculate variations unsuccessfully. e6 or whatever.
We will never know.
Yeah. And b4 looks a bit vague-ish. But I mean, it's always playable in these positions, because the idea of playing bishop a2 later is a very good and powerful one.
Yeah, and also I just don't want this pawn to hang should I ever decide to grab here.
But no, I think the main move you start with, I think, is rook e3.
Rook e3 here.
It stops d2, which is, I think, important in positions like this to make sure d2 is not something you need to analyze on every move. And now I want to take on d3 twice, and second time with the rook, and b3 will not be hanging. So if this works, it's fantastic for white. But there is, well, knight d4, knight d4, bishop somewhere, followed by c5 has to be analyzed concretely, or cd4, c5 as well. This could actually be my game against, not this. I think in my game I recaptured on d4 with a pawn, so. If you go b4 here, I will be, yeah, I was going to say I will be tempted to take, but after that bishop a2 seems quite strong, yeah. So this is one position you need to assess precisely. The other one would be perhaps rook e3, bishop g4, going for the spin, and if queen takes d3, just play g7, g6, and then all of your pieces are slightly stuck, and I want to take on f3 and on d4 twice with great play. So it does become, you know, very, very concrete. It's generally a line which starts reasonably slowly and then quickly escalates into calculating fists, so to speak, which is right up Veilly Street.
Yeah, I can't remember details, but I can remember I came to the same conclusion that this bishop e3, bishop d4 plan didn't seem to work when checking with the computer. The time is 14:24 German time.
That's not what I meant. Veilly is down an hour already.
Wesley So hasn't spent any time. He's been blitzing out all his moves, and Veilly, well, we've talked about this yesterday. He tends to take a break often very soon after he's out of theory. He disappears for 45 minutes. But yeah, he's been ambushed, or he didn't expect the open Spanish today.
Yeah, and this is not a line which is particularly comfortable to play for white if you don't know anything.
So weird.
Yeah, it's difficult to get your bearings properly, and it is actually a line in which you could end up being worse. He does go rook e3 though, so at least I was correct about that. Knight takes d4 blitzed out instantly. And now it shows us you can take with a sort of c takes d4 is a bit of a.
He's played that.
He's already played that. And now, yeah, in c5. I have a feeling actually that this is my game against Motylev. Bishop takes d3, c takes d4, rook e2, takes, queen e6 maybe, or queen e6 looks a bit weird. Some move. Eventually I lost that game by blundering something very simple. And we actually have this on the board already. I expect Wesley to take on d3 because bishop g4, bishop e4 is a problem for black. You can go queen e6 though. Actually, you can start by playing queen e6 here, trying to fight for the blockading d3 square. Yeah. I do get the feeling that this is either exactly or very close to my game against Sasha.
Can't leave you alone with this position for literally 1 minute 46 seconds because I need to enter the bathroom and that's the amount of time I will need.
Absolutely.
Seriously.
So I probably will have to stick with this position and this position only, because if I switch to anything else, the cartoon will be wrong, and I don't know how to switch between cartoons. And having the position not match the cartoon is unthinkable in this studio, not to ever be contemplated. What can I say about this? Structurally, I think white should be slightly better because black does not have... If black takes on d3 here, what he would like to have as his last light piece is a knight on e6, not a bishop on e7. If black had a blockading knight on e6, he would be, I guess, seriously better here. And as I say all this, Wesley does play queen e6, a move I mentioned but wasn't sure was so good. But it's clearly very playable, and it's also very clear that we're still very much in Wesley's preparation, so he knows what he's doing here. But even without the blockading knight on e6, black's counterplay is based on the fact that the white knight, which should be on d3, if white wants to achieve any kind of an advantage here, he needs to try and play knight e1 here with the idea of taking on f5 and then bringing the knight over to d3. If that does happen, the blockading knight on d3, it supports the pawn on e5 very well. It also supports white's potential push on the king side if he's ever developed well enough to start playing on the king side with, let's say, f4, bring the rook from a1 to f1 and play for a king side push there. But after knight e1, immediately I think black probably plays bishop g4, forcing a concession in the shape of f3, and then after bishop h5, ideas like bishop g5, bishop b3 become very, very unpleasant for white potentially. So play will be centered, I think, after queen e6 around white's attempts to properly blockade the pawn on d4. If he manages that with the queen is not enough, basically. You need to move your knight from f3 to d3 if you want to hope for an opening advantage. And black will be trying to stop that.
Big theory battle. I expect so to have done his homework here. He has 1 hour 47 minutes. You start with 140. Doesn't seem.
We are being told that this is actually my game against Motorev, as I suspected strongly. So
let's go to the Battle of Den Haag between Luc van Wely, who's actually from Tilburg, and Anish Giri, who just moved to Den Haag, left his small town of, what's it called? Rijswijk? I'm not sure if anybody Dutch is watching, let us know, but I think he just moved to The Hague with his wife, Sopiko Guramishvili. I've been informed that they have a couch now. They ordered a couch, but it took them 3 months until it was delivered, so big progress in Anish's life. And
it's very important to have a good couch.
It is.
People are asking us where is the video of the players playing. You do have a choice. If you want the video of the players busy at their jobs, you probably want to watch the official stream. We are here streaming the positions and talking about them. We don't have access to the live feed from the playing hall, so life is full of choices. It's one of them.
Yeah, this is just a Chess24 show. There is a show on the official website. I don't know which one. The URL tatasteelchess.com. I'm sure you can find out. There you have it. But yeah, this time the organizers, understandably, they want to have the live pictures on their site, and we just thought, let's do a show anyway. Let's bring in Grandmaster Peter Svidler and talk about chess because we enjoy it. What was I gonna talk about though? I was gonna talk about Luke playing h4 here, which is not the main move as we've mentioned.
Curious.
It's still a line that is sometimes played, but knight takes g6 is the center of the theoretical debates, because after h4, threatening h5, there is this move dc4, when black is in time to parry that threat of h5, I believe. Can't remember the move, or maybe there was some knight e5, but even just bishop d3
even the simple bishop d3 seems fine. But yeah, I was also curious whether you could take on e5 here and enter these kind of weird complications. d5, queen g1. If knight takes, we have bishop e4, and if king takes, we might have knight takes g4.
Yeah, there were some messy positions like that. Anyway, The computers have shown that h5 doesn't work, and I'm sure Anish knows all the details here.
Yeah, the question is whether Luki knows, but he probably does. He's been playing this for a while.
Yeah, this is one of his main lines with white, and
Yeah.
they used to take here on g6 anyway, and now something like g5, knight d5, or knight h7 was once played, but knight d5 is the main move. Bishop takes c4, and this is supposed to be okay-ish for black. But Luki has a different idea to play knight takes c4, which I've never seen, I must admit.
Yeah, it's a bit strange because black ends up keeping his bishop on g6 absolutely intact, and as you will see in a moment, it will be even sort of safely boxed in. Anish immediately played h5, forcing white to play g5, and then knight g5, and black has a very, very safe structure, which is not something you can actually say about white in some respects, because you probably still want to castle kingside, but having the pawns on h4 and g5 means that you will have to watch for potential breaks on the kingside and in the center.
I'm a little confused. I'm sure Luki prepared this at home, but yeah, I don't get it, because normally in return for pushing your pawns, you get the two bishops, and then you try to use that advantage. Well,
Yeah,
here you
exactly.
don't.
Luki went bishop g2, to which Anish, after some thought, replied knight 5 b6.
This is another important topic. Knight 7 b6 might look more normal, but this knight on d7, it's doing a pretty good job controlling
Yeah.
the e5 square and potentially helping these breaks. So this is quite a typical move for these positions.
And Luki played b3, and frankly, I think black should be very happy with the results of the opening.
Yeah, I'm not
Bishop
sure
b4
something's
followed by something like queen e7, eventual castle kingside, play for the e5 break. Just feels like or c5 break, depending on what's going on the board. Just feels like black should never be in any kind of trouble here.
I agree. I'm not sure what Luki prepared, or maybe mixed up something, or I'm not sure what happened here.
White's position is still very solid, and
course.
it will be ages before black starts getting anything seriously active going. But structurally, you don't feel very worried when you get a position like this out of the opening with black.
This is a pretty good Slav version. This bishop surviving and being so active here. It's pretty good news. What else do we have going on? We haven't visited the top game for a while.
Yeah,
co-leaders.
Interesting developments there. Ding played c4, which he also played
Against Vichy.
and
against Bohemia.
Yeah, against Vichy definitely, but in a slightly different position. It was, I think, after bishop g5. Yeah, instead of knight h4, they tried playing bishop g5 in this position, and black can sort of ignore it. But there's also this move c5 c4 here, which was played in top-level games already, and he does the same again here when White's play is sort of more concrete and his light square bishop is about to be exchanged off. So it goes knight f5, bishop takes f5, ef, castles. And somewhat curiously here, Fabiano immediately swaps off the bishop on a2 for the knight on a5. I'd be very tempted to try and play around that knight, so to speak. Go, let's say, bishop g5 here.
I was wondering if d5 is a threat.
That probably is what they want to do, but let's say d takes on c4. Let's try and continue the variation a little bit. There is d4 here.
Ooh.
Could be a playable move. I'm not entirely sure, but it could be a playable move. I will take on f6, you will take on f6 probably. I will go knight e4, you take with something on c4. Here I think b4 might be very strong. b4 forces you to take on b3. I will play b4 again next move. And the difference in our bishops will be very significant.
Yeah, this looks very unpleasant.
Yeah, this looks kind of horrible for black.
Maybe knight takes us.
Knight takes, but once again, it's a strange position which is difficult to assess. But I'd be very interested in it as a white player because I treasure this bishop on a2 a great deal as a
Rui Lopesian.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for, obviously. But instead of all this, Fabiano went for a more practical approach straight away. He went d takes c4. You can't really take with the pawn anymore because bishop g5 will secure the structure, and then we will play b4, cb3, cb3, b4 again, and all these unpleasant kinds of things will happen to black. So black, of course, recaptures with the knight, takes, and bishop g5. It's an understandable decision, but still, I always feel slightly sad when I have to exchange off my light square bishop, and especially once, as a white player, I managed to trade off black's light square bishop, and the one on a2 has no counterpart.
Still, what white wants is to just go bishop takes f6 followed by knight d5, and if nothing bad happens along the way,
Yeah.
it's a good knight bad bishop scenario.
Once again, somewhat curious, because black played rook b8 here, and bishop takes f6 has not been played in reply.
I was thinking about this. I guess the point is after rook b1,
Maybe e4,
you can
yeah.
go e4.
No, that's the only rational explanation I could come up with, because otherwise white gets this preferred blockade. But knight e4? Knight d6 or queen d6, but maybe it's not very much. Just bishop takes a3, and yes, white will be technically a pawn up, but in endgames, with an outside passer on a6, I guess black is reasonably comfortable. So Fabiano replied to rook by rook b1, and now we're pretty sure that bishop f6, and something like queen d5 is a large threat, blockading everything, bringing the knight over to e4 and so on. So black replied by knight d7, keeping at least the knights on the board, bishop e7, queen e7, knight d5. And Ding has been thinking here for a while, choosing a square.
To my passive mind, d8 looks like the most obvious choice.
I would go queen d8 here in a blitz game, that's for sure. But
it's queen g5, which he's probably thinking about, just feels a little loose. You're not threatening to take here. You don't keep an eye on this. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You have to think about knight e3.
Knight e3 is worrying. Even knight c7 in some positions might be a bit of an issue, attacking lots of pawns on the queen side. Yeah, queen d8 just looks tidier, if I can use that word.
You can.
But yeah, but there's still issues. There's queen g4 attacking the pawn on c4 and creating some pressure. There's knight e3 once again, attacking both d6 and c4. There's queen e2. Lots of moves you need to consider, because if black could make two moves in a row, and he does play queen g8, it's justifying our ramblings there. If black could just play knight f6 here or knight b6, if black were to move, he would have very few problems, I think. But white still has a tempo to create a direct threat and make it hard for black to immediately trade off the knights. If only the heavy pieces get left on the board. Should be very close to equality, I think. Yeah. Because black gets a lot of counterplay along the b file.
But what if we attack this pawn? I'm not sure. Let's try this.
Yeah, it's awkward. It's awkward because
rook c8 keeps it, but it's not a pretty move.
If you absolutely have to play rook c8, white immediately starts feeling much happier about life, I think. Because black's counterplay along the b file was a major source of counterplay. Knight.
This is probably inaccurate.
Yeah, that is a bit inaccurate because of knight e7 check. Can we sacrifice a pawn here by playing, I don't know, knight b6 or knight b6 probably?
That's what I thought, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, takes, queen takes, queen c4, rook f c8, queen d3. And Fabiano played queen g2 instead, which is a... it's actually, let's show a cute idea, which I'm not sure is good, but it's very cute anyway. Rook c8, f6. Knight f6. Well played, sir. But actually black gets a lot of compensation for this exchange. King h8, takes. And if black is allowed to build his center, with the king on e6 here, let's put it like this. With the king on e6 here, I would think black is at least not worse. Yeah, but the king is on h8, so we can start maybe playing something like a 4, forcing e4, then plant the rook on d4 and start playing against the g4 here, maybe. Yeah, black might not be in time here. So queen g4, I have a feeling this might be a major reason why queen g4 and not queen e2 has been played, because it might have a direct refutation if black wants to go rook c8.
Because he has no other move. Knight
e7 check is already a huge threat, so yeah, it does force black to go for this line. Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder if this is still all Fabiano's preparation, because when such small tactics all fit in perfectly, you begin suspecting that a player knows what's going on.
I don't think we have to suspect it. I'd bet any amount. He's only spent 5 minutes, and we know Fabiano, he does think very carefully once he leaves preparation, and he's very well prepared. I'm sure he's still in book. But Ding Liren is not, and that's not a pleasant situation. You can go, once again, knight f6 or knight b6, give the pawn and hope for the best, but...
A very interesting piece of chess trivia / theory has been tweeted to Chess24 Live. Apparently, Carlsen's 10 g5 has been played in the 9th game of the Petrosian between Nick Much and 63. So there's nothing new under the moon. And that game took a turn.
g4?
Yeah, g4 is not a move I would have guessed in my first 3 tries in this position.
What would your first 3 be?
Queen d3, queen d2, and although maybe g3 would be number 3 actually. I mean g4, because you don't really want to sacrifice on g4, and if you allow knight takes e3, you might as well just force black to do it.
You can play rook a1.
Yeah, rook a1, but that's what I mean. Since black seemed to be taking on e3 anyway, you might just want to settle the question once and for all, and black should take on e3 here. I mean, knight h6 is possible, but I mean, we've already been wrong once. If Magnus goes knight h6 here,
He's not going to go knight h6.
Wait a second, put it on the board, come on. h3, f5. This is not ridiculous.
He's not going to do it.
Not ridiculous.
Not going to be able to do it.
How long an odds can you give me on this?
I'll give you even money.
Yeah. If you preface it by not gonna do it, you should be giving me more than even money. But yeah, it's possible. And the fact that knight takes e3 is not on the board yet kind of indicates that Magnus is, well, either away from the board, which we can't really see because we're operating by looking at diagrams.
Blindfold chess.
Yeah, or he is actually contemplating alternatives.
He's probably not contemplating this.
Yeah, I would think this is less likely. Yeah, I'm very safe in saying knight g7 is the least likeliest of the 4 legal moves available to him. No, actually, he has more. He can actually come back to d6 if he wants to, but that would be really weird. That would be really, really weird.
Okay, so this.
Well, h3 does feel like. Although, I mean, maybe there's an argument for queen g2. Because knight g4, bishop g5, I'm reasonably happy with white.
Yeah, this looks good.
And f6, now I play h3 and you can't play f5. Yeah, this might be a problem with knight h6. Yeah, I'm not taking you even money.
So he's going to take here, most likely,
Fe,
and this is a weird position. Black has a lot of strategic things going for him. He might have to endure some initiative on the king's side.
Yeah, e3, e4, probably next move white makes if he is allowed to, and it's very difficult to actually disallow it. Because if you play f5, your d5 pawn will be hanging. Because you would like to take with a pawn here, but that is a pawn sacrifice. Sorry.
I don't know. It's way over my head. If you, let's say h6 to prepare f5, then e4 is coming, and I'm not sure what to do.
D,
knight takes
f5. But takes knight g3 or knight g3 immediately, even actually. Might be even stronger. Yeah, this is
now
very.
I regret h6 because I weakened this square, so maybe
this is very, very boring for black already.
This looks bad.
Yeah.
So let's try to find a better move than h6.
Knight f6. But knight g4, knight g5. Yeah, that was just a blunder. Sorry. Yeah,
No, we can show that here at the very least you have this.
Yeah, at the very least you end up with a pawn up because hg is forced, and then the rook just returns, and white has an extra pawn with continued initiative on the king's side. So that's not very good.
It is not. I'm confused as usual.
I'm beginning to wonder about other moves actually.
Which ones?
Not here. I mean, in the actual position. I think it's really not an accident. I don't think he's gone walkabout. I think he's carefully considering other options. Knight takes e3 is by far the most obvious, but you do need to connect it with something concrete, because otherwise you might get rolled over in the center.
But also, if you don't go knight takes e3, it feels a bit like your previous play has failed, like just abstractly, right? If you go for this with this idea to threaten knight f5,
And he does take on e3.
parried by b3, knight f5, and whatever, go away.
Yeah, knight e3 is on the board, f takes. Yeah, but you need to be very accurate here with black, because if white assumes total control in the center, if let's say e4 is left completely unopposed here, you might not like your position very much. Some kind of a challenge to the white center needs to be issued here.
It's a mess. I'll cheat briefly and get a computer's opinion, because I'm too curious. The computer gives b5 in this position, giving up a pawn. Which probably is a good move, just to distract.
Yeah, it's a good move, but it's not an easy move to settle on, at least not immediately, because you need to realize that e3, e4 is such a huge positional idea that some kind of a plan needs to be settled on against it. I would still probably play e4 even here. I guess the idea is to play b4, but I'm not unhappy about going knight g1 and taking on e4 with the queen. And I'm definitely not unhappy about sacrificing the pawn on c4. But maybe DC, BC, and maybe something like e5 here. But it becomes a huge mess. Even e3 is playable.
Yeah, I was wondering about b4 and then e5. That's some.
But once again, knight g1, e5, e3, c5 maybe. Such a weird position.
Feels like checkers.
Yeah, it does feel like players are playing some kind of a mix. At least black is playing some kind of a mix, and white is trying to play a normal game and not succeeding very well.
So instead of e3, I was curious.
Knight
we can
e3,
go
f5,
crazy,
yeah.
right?
No, it's a huge mess, but black does need to meet white's expansion in the center very forcefully, because g5 is not an adornment to his position, let's put it like this. So if white manages to break open in the center, break the center open, I will settle on something eventually. It will be unpleasant for black.
Hashtag break the center.
Yeah.
I don't know. What I always find impressive with Magnus, no matter if good or bad, is this position looks completely alien to me. I've never seen this structure in my life, and he often finds a way, even against the world's best like Elyanov, to make them uncomfortable, because you can't play on pattern recognition here at all. You just concrete problem solving.
Yes, this
he's
is
confident he's the best there.
Yeah, not without reason. So
okay.
What else is there? So Dingler does sacrifice a pawn.
I thought you asked for the so game.
No, sorry. It's lower down.
Here we are, Mr. Ding. Once again, my cartoon game is not on point.
Yeah, so black decides to not to go passive. And actually after queen g4, there was probably no comfortable way to even go passive and keep the material. So he goes rook b5 here, queen takes c4 and knight b6. Trading off white's proud knight on d5, but at the price of a pawn. So it's clear that white is better here. The question is how much. And also how to convert. I would gravitate towards b4 naturally, because if I can get b4 and c4 in, I would be, or a4. But I guess a5 is the biggest issue here. I can play c3 though.
Hang on, a5 can I take?
Ah, yeah, sorry, yeah, going crazy here. Yeah, a5 is not a move. If a5 is not a move, a4 actually is a very large is a very large threat. So
maybe you have to go d5 and then
queen e2
a5.
or queen b3 as well.
If you say here I can't go a5.
You still can go a5, but you can go e4 here,
e4,
or
d4,
d4 maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I forgot about d4. D4 does.
No, we can just go back.
Well, but
now e4 maybe.
You feel you've gained something. Rook fd8 followed by rook g5 is now a possibility, for instance. Yeah. b3 is also possible, but b4 looks more concrete.
I like b4, it's just restricting this dude.
Yeah, and actually g5 maybe queen b3. Because a5 I can still take on a5. Rook b3, ab, rook a3, but this probably is lost for black.
Yes.
Rook b5 is very strong. Almost any move here looks like it's crushing. So
not gonna be able to do it.
yeah, so it does feel like Fabiano is continuing his excellent form in this tournament. He started with 3 out of 4, running sort of under expected. In those 4 games, he missed a clear win in a very difficult game against Giri with black. Played that game very, very well, and then in a rook endgame made an understandable mistake, which threw away a full point. So seems like he's continuing. Unsurprisingly, he's continuing to play very convincingly in this tournament.
I wasn't impressed. You start with 7 out of 7 in St. Louis. Do you want us to get excited about 3 out of 4 or something? Come on.
Yeah, can't please some people.
Hashtag lowered expectations.
So, and once again, I start a sentence with so and then switch to some other game. This is Navarro against Karekin. Let me try this. No, let me not try this.
Okay.
Let me. No.
I'll help.
Too difficult.
Almost there.
And no. There we go. Success. I'm learning on the job, so to speak.
So am I. That's why I'm pleased to commentate with you, because I'm actually learning about chess stuff on the job.
Yeah.
It's a pity we don't get along, but you can't have everything.
Another week or so, and I will actually be able to manage tick boxes on the screen proficiently. But yeah, it will take a while. This is a game between David Navarro and Sergei Karyakin, in which we left it with Sergei thinking about his options in this position. He eventually settled on a very natural move, making another very concrete move, attacking a piece, queen f6. Of course, bishop takes e5, queen takes e5 is not very attractive because...
Give me 1 second,
Sure.
sorry, I'm panicking because people are saying in the chat there's a black screen. I'm not sure what that is. Is anybody still watching us? I always get very nervous that people can't watch us anymore.
Yeah,
But it looks like there's no mass complaints yet. Let us know if you can watch this beautiful show. Both of you who are our regular viewers. S Debates looks like he's still around. But I'm sorry to interrupt, looks like we're still on the air.
Yeah, so queen f6 hitting the bishop, and as I was saying, bishop takes e5 looks like it wins material, but what it actually does is self-mates in 3. Not very advisable for white. Therefore, bishop g3, bishop e2, knight e2, and h5. Black's play is, very logical up to this point, I think, because he is trying to play as concretely as possible. He is seemingly going to be a pawn down for the majority of this game, because now the d5 pawn is very, very well protected and is unlikely to be won back. But as compensation for that, Black gets tremendous piece play.
What does white do? He played knight d4.
He played knight d4, which is very, very decent, because you need to... h4 is coming, pretty much.
If you played this, then knight g4
Yeah, knight g4 looks very
awkward.
awkward, yeah. You don't really want to do that, because this knight on g4 will be a huge problem for the rest of the game. And instead of that, he went knight d4, and after h4 he will take on e5, and the knight will get to f3, protecting h2 and stabilizing, basically.
I'm not 100% sure how you recapture. This looks obvious, but then knight f3 comes with tempo.
But
So
also
I was
bishop
thinking
e5,
about
knight
this
f3 anyway.
Be greedy.
And maybe h3 here, because bishop b2, rook b1, I don't particularly like for black.
Fair enough.
With d6 to follow, or queen takes b7 simply. I think after bishop b5, knight f3, I would throw in h3 here to at least confuse more. But knight e5, queen h3 though, no, that is an issue. I forgot about queen takes h3. So, yeah, well, you can play bishop d6, but then white will play h3, and he is very, very secure on the king side from here on out.
Still, don't I have some long-term thing going? This bishop is quite powerful. I'm not sure if I haven't calculated queen b7. Just feels like this.
Wait, let's go back a little bit. h3 I think was a little bit blasé here. Rook e1 maybe, or
It's
rook
one of
c1.
my favorite music groups. Blase.
Rook e1. Rook b1 I wasn't really seriously considering.
Oh, sorry.
bishop d6. Either rook c1 or rook e1. I can't really choose.
Make up your mind. I can't.
Rook e1. Okay. And now probably h3. You get the feeling black needs to get this in before white completely stabilizes on the king side. Probably replied to by just taking it. But then black always will have some counterplay against this king. Never, I think, more than enough for more than a draw. White will always be able to just, let's say, queen g6, king f1, queen f5, king g2 is always a mechanism which could lead to repetitions, and black really lacks the pieces to exploit it properly.
I have a hard time believing white could ever be better here with this king, though, even though it's 2 pawns.
It's 2 pawns, but yeah, there will be very, very serious compensation here.
Yeah. And the line you're saying, queen h5, f5.
f5 anywhere, yeah. So can we find anything better for white after h4 and bishop takes, bishop takes? I think knight f3
By the way, if we're going back, we could also consider this, and well, queen f6 is the same, but maybe we have a different move here, like queen f4 to prove.
Why are you forcing me to play g3? I probably don't mind.
That's what I was wondering. Probably it's...
And rook e1 here.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I'm going.
Or rook c1 once again.
No, but I agree. This improves white's position more than it hurts it. So.
Yeah, this position can be arrived at in 2 different ways, and yeah, it remains to be seen if white is actually better here, because I don't think white can be worse. I think he will need to misplay this quite badly to actually run the risk of being worse. But
I agree, but I really like this bishop. It's such a powerhouse, providing counterplay, blocking this pawn, doing all the hard work.
Yeah, it's very, very good compensation for the pawn. So what else is out there? I think Magnus chose something in the position we.
He's gone for b5.
He's gone for b5.
Which this was my only cheat so far. I looked at the computer evaluation here, and the computer gave b5 and black is fine. But now after e4, fire on board.
Yeah, I think some kind of a sort of further forcing moves in the center will be required from black. White's center still needs to be challenged. He should not be allowed to, let's say, get e4, e5 win comfortably. That would be worrying, I think, for black. Although, once the knight is driven away from c3, maybe black has a tempo to decide on something.
I have no idea. My first instinct would be to go dc, and then after bc, think very hard if I have some e5 or b4, e5, or even c5, one of those to blow open the position.
dc, bc, and probably even b4 in this position is how you start calculating here. It's the most natural approach.
Yeah, and here one of those moves, I'm really not sure which one, but it's complete chaos. I prefer c5 to e5, I think, because we earlier looked at some knight landing here immediately. Well, if I force e3, I might still be in trouble, but I have some options. Like
Bishop b7, you could actually argue for playing e5 anyway now, but your maneuver 93 knight f5 is no longer possible because we forced white to play e3. I meant in this position we were looking at...
1 second, let me do my magic. Nah, let me just do this. Here we go.
We were looking at e5, and we mentioned that apart from e2, e3, there's also a craziness starting with this. But by starting with c5 and forcing white to play e3, and only here playing e5, you cut down on white's options drastically, and also you stop white from playing e5 as you indicated. So I think this structure is playable for white, although black of course gets a lot of counterplay against the vulnerable white center, followed by knight b6. The pawn on c4 is in a lot of trouble here potentially. So yeah, it seems like black is doing well, but the position is still very, very sharp and needs to be played well by both players.
No, I'm very happy. Today really seems to be a lot of action on the board. I think we could say it's a day of fun chess, which I prepared for diligently for this joke, because this is my new favorite person on earth. This is Devon Fun Chess, playing in the NFL, 21-year-old, I think, wide receiver. It's a great name.
Yeah, I was somewhat confused when I was shown this photograph earlier today, but all that was explained to me, and I'm now also part of the fan club.
Yeah, that's the amount of my preparation for today's show. So against Wei Yi.
Yeah, we're really pushing this to the limit, and perhaps we shouldn't be. Yeah, a typical position has a reason here, where White did not seem to get his knight from f3 to g3 in time, and now he probably never will.
Is he slightly worse? Could he be slightly worse here?
I lost that game against Motilev, which I talked about earlier, from this similar structure. It is possible to misplay it and get worse, especially if Black, let's say, managed to invade. What happened to me is that I blundered some Queen c6 or Queen c7, Queen c2 maneuver, and once it landed somewhere deep in my camp, I couldn't really deal with it, and my position collapsed. Yeah, but not in this position, obviously. But the c-file is the only source of potential entry for Black, but it needs to be watched because your pieces are somewhat tied down by the necessity of watching over the d4 pawn. This will be, from here on out, I think it will be a slow maneuvering game for a while.
I'm not sure I trust our clocks, but if I do trust them, Wesley So still hasn't spent any time almost, like 15 minutes maybe, because they start with 140, maybe a bit more.
Well, he was blitzing up to Queen e6 for sure. I'm not sure if Rook d2, Rook takes d3 was featured heavily in his preparation, but up to that point, yeah, he wasn't really thinking very hard. So, Mamedyarov Khoifan has developed a little bit. Black, as we expected, is still diligently, is that the word? Postponing. Yes. I know it exists. I'm not sure if I should be using it for this particular sentence. Black does not want to take on d4. Even having played h6, there was a game in the challenges this year where Black took on d4 and well, you can't yeah, something like this, and then after some kind of a pass, bishop takes h6 becomes already possible because there's this tactic which is very, very typical for this position. And Alexei Dreyev won a game in the challengers with this tactic, although he later misplayed it somewhat. And
did he win that game in the end?
He did win that game in the end, but he went from being completely winning after 15 moves to a total mess with unclear evaluations to being totally winning again at some point, and he eventually did win.
Yeah, poor Anna Haast, his opponent in that game, is having a hard time. In the challenges, she lost her first 6 games, and today she's facing Livio Di Ternisipiano with the black pieces, the rating favorite, the German #1, or I'm not sure if he's German, but he plays for the German national team, he used to play for Romania, so I don't know the right term. Is it compatriot? Like, I'm never sure. My teammate, if they ever put me on the German national team, which is unlikely, let's put it that way. And very nice guy.
Yeah, and,
so
and
hard
also
to root against Dieter. Our teammate in Baden-Baden
yeah,
too.
we've been playing together for the same club for ages. Yeah, he's a very, very nice guy. We know and like him.
Even though he has a lot of hair.
Yeah, he is very, very attached to his haircut.
I must get an Isipiano cartoon. Anyway, good old Druco piano. More often than not, but it's all about move order subtleties. Black has already played or plays h6 here. But with the knight on d2 and not rook e1, you can actually get away with playing knight h5 because there's no bishop g5,
yeah,
which often is a problem.
And it became very, very sharp somehow, because after queen f6, Dieter, instead of going knight f1, which is what they normally
The problem
do.
is here, this is a theoretical position with the pawn on h6, but here you can go knight f4 and something has gone... I'm
not entirely in time, because with the bishop already on e3, there's this weird plan of going king h2, knight g1, securing the g3 pawn. If black, let's say, does nothing here, we go king h2, knight g1, then we play g3, drive away this knight from f4. And once it's driven away, white can try and expand on the king side. I played this position with black. I remember the first time this plan was used against me, I was very bewildered, because I thought, this is so slow, how can this be good? But it is actually pretty good.
No, this is one of the, for me, painful lessons you have to learn as an Italian player with black. Because when I first learned this plan, I was very excited. Knight e5 is no good, and you go queen f6, knight f4. Well, you play the position a couple times, and white actually has a couple of decent plans here. Knight e3, knight g4 is also a decent plan. But
Yeah,
You learn this is a bit of fool's gold. There's not that much to do, and white can play around this knight.
yeah, it does look very, very attractive when you first settle on this, but it's just one active piece which can, with careful play, be driven away, and then you're left with a slightly more passive pieces, and yeah, white can expand in the center. Anyway, the position on the board is not a slow position at all anymore. After queen f6, Dieter settled on d4, and now he's been thinking for a very long time. After e4, he went e5 with the point of d5 against knight e4, and great positional, great tactical play for the currently sacrificed 2 pawns.
A lot of tricks. Queen g6,
Yeah.
h4 picks up this too.
Dieter generally likes sacrificing material. He's a very, very imaginative tactical player. In the European Team Championship, which finished recently in Reykjavik, he played an absolutely insane game against David Navarra, which I encourage all of you to look at, because the opening of that game was very, very exciting. And here I have a feeling he kind of, I wouldn't call it miss, but I think he thought knight takes e5 is not very good because knight e5 seems to win the piece. But d takes e3 is now a huge issue for white, because f2 is hanging, and you can't coordinate your pieces properly. Knight e4, queen takes e5.
Yeah, I was looking for something here, but maybe there's just nothing, because cb2, black already picked up so much material.
And after knight takes e3, there's queen f5 is the simplest. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not anywhere she wants, I think, because if you don't play queen f5, I could get decent play for the piece, but queen f5 is just incredibly unpleasant. Gaining the one tempo, black needs to play knight f6, and once this knight returns to f6, all the squares are covered.
Absolutely.
So, curious game. We'll be keeping an eye on that, and
yeah, let's return to the Masters group, but that position just caught my right eye. I don't know why not the left one.
Yeah, oddly specific.
e4, b4 is on the board. Not the move I expected.
Slightly surprising, because it gives white the option of taking with the queen. Yeah.
This, which might still be a total mess, who knows, but...
It's definitely a total mess, but on the other hand, maybe it makes knight a4 less attractive, because after knight a4, black can maybe ignore it for a move. I'm not sure why Magnus chose to play b4 immediately instead of d takes c4.
Another thing, not so relevant, but sometimes this is an idea. Can we take here? Because I would think black might just take back.
Yeah, I think black will take back.
Because this followed by some knight e5 or rook d1, knight e5. This looks incredibly scary.
Yeah, looks very interesting and quite promising for white. Knight f6.
Here, I don't know how to do it.
h3.
Maybe just take.
h3 is not out of the question. c7. Queen c7, knight g5, attacking everything, but I think h6 kind of covers it, sadly. It's a draw. Rook f6, hg, rook g6 check.
This, if I'm ambitious.
Yeah.
Still this too.
Yeah, it's a complete mess, but we shouldn't get carried away with any one line here, because both sides have a lot of options here, and there's very little point for us to get embroiled in discussing any of the moves available to white here, because all of them are very interesting, and the position is so interesting that we could do that for a very long time, and then...
Hang on, so your line of reasoning is let's not look at any lines because they're all interesting?
Well, there are 7 games in process, and I just feel that if we attempt to analyze this position properly, we will not return to any other game.
No, not properly, but let's throw some pieces around like we just did. ED, go for it. But ED also CD, I'm not sure we've achieved anything.
Hang on a second, is this... No. I wanted to go CD5, D6 here, but that will not work. I don't believe it. Hang on. Takes. You probably want to take, because knight e4
annoys me.
Yeah, now I have queen e4, but it's still only one check.
So some knight g5.
Oh, there's knight b6 even. It's not even one check. Knight g5 I will just take on g5.
Yeah, I don't think it's enough.
No, it's completely lost for white, I think. Knight b6, bishop g2, any move. No, this doesn't work. So e5, c5 will have to retreat with the knight. And that's kind of sad.
Or advance.
Yeah, somewhere. I don't know, knight a4, knight b5 is bad, yeah, knight a4. But if we want to play knight a4, why did we take on d5?
Just because it's exciting to sacrifice a piece. But yeah, I don't know. We have two e-pawns. Might make sense to get rid of one of them. Then again, this pawn is also restricting a lot of black's army. Who knows?
Yeah, I still feel that black probably will want to take on c4 next move, which kind of begs the question why he started with b4, giving white more options.
It's a mess.
Yeah, it's a complete mess, and doing any kind of justice to this position, I think, will destroy our coverage of the other 6 games.
I'll cheat though. I'll bring in the Judge Dredd of chess and ask for his opinion. Yeah, equal.
Yeah.
I slightly prefers black can't decide between knight a4 or knight d1. After knight a4, yeah, dc4, and if bc c5 stuff like we looked at, well, queen c4 just wants this, and he's happy.
He is
e5,
happy.
c5, and he sets the board on fire and enjoys himself.
Well, but it's still very indicative as to what black needs to be doing here. He needs to constantly challenge the white center, because if white ever gets some breathing space to settle the structure and bring his pieces to proper squares, black will be in trouble. G5 is not a very nice move to have on the board.
No, with the pawn on g7, black is more or less winning in all these positions.
Yeah,
but
pretty
it's not
close to winning. Yeah. Let's look at the old Dutch encounter. Yeah, as we expected, black immediately starts playing in the center. I was talking about the e5 break, but I thought black needs to prepare it with queen e7, but after queen e7, a3 was a bit of an issue, I think, on the previous move. Queen e7 would have been
blundering the bishop.
not really blundering the bishop, but you probably will need
Giving it up.
Will need to give it up, because knight c4, bc4 followed by c5 is very attractive for white, I think.
Yeah, don't like it. But e5, what's going on? If I just go knight takes e5, I won a pawn. But
I want to take and go maybe queen e7 anyway, actually.
yeah,
There's also queen d3.
It's this typical Slav activity, which I don't
Well,
like.
queen e3, knight e2. I'm not that enamored. Enamored.
Depends
not-
how French you are. Both fine.
Okay. Not very good with long words. Bear of little brain.
I'm German. We have all kinds of long words.
Yeah, you're
Box Geburtstagstorte is just a
Stop swearing at me.
way to start a sentence.
Stop swearing at me. Yeah, I don't really like queen d3. I think it's misplaced, and I think it's more important to attack the e5 pawn than to drive this knight towards better squares.
Good.
Queen e7, e4, both rook d8, and even long castles maybe in some cases.
Yeah, this
might
is
be,
what I was scared of. Where's
Yeah.
my poor king go?
followed by rook takes d2 probably next move, and then the second rook to d8, and then white resigns. That kind of a scenario.
Let's just
so.
illustrate. You have to defend against bishop c3, so let's say
And
this.
here bishop a3 probably finishes the game, but yeah, let's
Yeah,
illustrate.
just for...
Queen d2, rook d8, second rook to g3, yeah, queen b2, rook d3, rook
So many
c1.
good moves here.
Yeah, queen c5 wins on the
is
spot
also
as well.
fun.
Yeah. No, yeah, this is never going to happen, because it's quite obvious that white can't play this way.
But Luke is really, I don't know, something's gone wrong with his preparation, and he's pushing his luck here, because black doesn't deserve that much activity and such a strong
A3
bishop
maybe?
on g6. After e5, huh?
Yeah, let's just go a3. I think
let's
this.
take here.
Yeah, definitely I'm taking on b4, and I'm actually kind of happy about this now suddenly.
Oh, now this bishop is
Yeah, this
too
is
strong.
this is a monstrous bishop on c3 all of a sudden. Now, black will need to react differently here. You can maybe even make an argument for bishop e7, but then I'm much happier about previous lines. If it lands on e7, there will be, it will be much easier to deal with
Hang on.
all the incoming troubles.
What about this now? I don't
Okay.
like it, but I also don't like giving you that bishop. And I'm not sure where. d6 or a5, maybe here.
I understand. Yeah, knight e4.
Could even take, but I also don't like giving you that bishop, so let's say castles.
And I actually managed to castle, which is kind of important. Because I was getting worried there for a second that I might get stuck with the king on e1, which was not ideal.
Yeah, this time I'm still not sure if it's problems, but look like at least white solved his
Play
problem.
bishop, come
Could
on.
even
Play
be-
bishop c7. Come on. This is... Be more...
Be more aggressive.
Yeah, be more...
In this position, I was going to argue is nothing special, but
Bishop c7 maybe, followed by rook e8, knight f8. Yeah, I mean, once again, you would like to bring this pawn back from g5 to g3.
This looks like a Petrov where white went for
Yeah,
g4, h4, g5
which
for
he
no
actually
particular reason.
sometimes does. I think I've looked at Petrovs where white had a similar structure. It normally it annoys you a great deal because you gain some space and some time by doing that in many openings, but later in the game, if black manages to solve his immediate issues, you start feeling, why have I done this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
Was reason for exclusion from the Pioneers Palace, I was told in the old years. There were some coaches in the Pioneers Palace in St. Petersburg who would straight out throw you out of the chess section for playing g4 with the king on g1.
What's the story with these pioneer palaces and in general the Russian chess school? It wasn't like you could go anywhere and they would teach you the same secrets of rook endings, but there were a lot of places where you had proper coaches.
Elyanov, by the way, does play e4 takes d5, so you know the one move we sort of analyzed has been played on the board. Yeah, well played us. When I started learning chess, the system was very simple. Every city district in a large city. I mean, I'm from St. Petersburg. I don't know what it was like on the periphery, so to speak, but in St. Petersburg and in Moscow, the city is divided into districts, and every district would have a pioneer's house, not a palace, a house. There's a distinction.
Even District 9.
Absolutely, yeah. And there will be a coach who is capable of teaching you the basics, and then there would be some schools which would try and attract the better kids studying in those. In St. Petersburg, the Pioneers Palace was the biggest one of those, which attracted all the best juniors. I never went there.
Oh, so the Pioneers Palace is not the thing that's in every district.
No,
that's
that's
where you end up once you've shown some promise.
Yeah, that's centralized, and that's where the best coaches supposedly are, and this is where the best kids tend to gravitate towards.
And what do you do from there? Then they take you to tournaments, or there's some kids competitions, or how does it work? Like how do you play your first chess tournament? I'm a 6-year-old Russian.
No, there are tournaments inside those initial structures. You will be playing against other juniors there, and if you do well, you will progress to, let's say, city championships and so on and so forth.
So how did anybody figure out you were any good?
I did well
in the kids tournaments.
Yeah, I played all the kids tournaments. The under 12s, the under 14th. I was generally doing quite well in those. So yeah, I showed some promise when I was.
No, I'm just genuinely asking about like the origin of your chess talent in St. Petersburg.
There was a structure which would propel you towards the better teaching, the better the better coaches. But I never actually went to one of the bigger coaching establishments in St. Petersburg. I studied in my local pioneer's house for a while, and then I was on my own for a number of years, and then I got very lucky because the next person I worked with was Andrei Lukin, who I think did a tremendous amount for my development as a chess player. Without him, I'm not sure what would have become of me.
Do you think, this is a half-serious question, that you got very lucky that you were a young chess talent before the internet was around?
Never really thought about that because, I mean, in some respects, yes, but on the other hand, information is so much easier available now than it was then that, some of the problems we had are no longer problems. People don't really understand how difficult it was to find any information about what other people were doing, and preparing for games was absolutely hit and miss because you, against most people at your level, you had no idea what they were playing, and you just had your repertoire and you hoped it held up against whatever you were going to face. But on the other hand, yeah, everything was slower, and if you found an interesting opening and an interesting idea in an opening, it could actually survive for half a year without people checking it.
Yeah, that, and then also there's, or at least in my case, there's a lot less distractions. We all know how much time we're all wasting on the internet watching this show if you're really wasting it. But when I was a kid, I had my chess books which I read, and there wasn't that much else to distract me from it.
No, in that respect, absolutely, yeah. You could
That sounded sad.
easily concentrate on whatever it was you were doing because there were much fewer distractions. But yeah, in terms of studying chess, I don't think there is much to recommend the previous eras because books are still there if you want them.
And there's chess24.com with tons of exciting educational videos where top players like us, top players and pretentious opening experts share their expertise. So go premium, check it all out.
Yeah, let's go have a look at the takes d5.
Where's that?
In the Ilyanov Carlsen game.
Ah, that game.
Yeah. So, yeah, I should stop doing that. I still think c takes d5 is a saner choice here than taking on c3.
It's more fun though, this.
Yeah, let's have a look at this. dc6, there's knight f6, knight b6 and knight b8. Even knight b8 is not completely ridiculous because the knight on f3 is currently busy protecting the d4 pawn, which is very, very important. So protecting c6 is not that easy.
Use my tactical expertise.
Yeah, knight c6. You wanted to go knight e5, but it's not working. Knight takes e5. And your tactical expertise. Yeah, you're kind of lost here.
This is just bad, yeah?
Yeah, you're kind of lost here. You don't. No, you need to. The pawn on c6 is very, very important. You need to try and
Promise
preserve.
this. Yeah. There's a check, so
there's a check on b6. So after knight b8, you need to look for. I mean, d5 might be a move. Queen e4 might be a move. It feels slightly strange.
This looks fun.
To let this pawn on c3 survive, or maybe even queen d5 check. Yeah. Really weird structure, but takes, knight a6, bishop d6, knight a6, yeah. Really weird structure, rook ac1, knight c7. I have no idea who is better and why here. Knight e5, rook d8. Complete mess. None of this is forced. Let's preface anything that we'll be doing in the next 5 minutes by this is A, fun chess, and B, not at all forced. Very, very difficult to get this position right live and at first try.
It's also tricky for black, because even though objectively we've seen earlier, the computer is quite happy with black, but it's a huge decision at every juncture. Like the move b4 was tricky to play, and now bc3 or cd5 is sort of a fundamental decision.
Yeah.
Oof.
E takes d5 is
no
possible, but we don't like it. Yeah. First of all, c takes d5 continues being a move, although it's probably less attractive here.
I just don't like it on general grounds. If I go away, we've weakened too many things, and this bishop is not getting active. Even this, I guess, is a total mess. But why would he do that?
No, doesn't feel right. Okay, so e d5, c takes d5. Let's touch on this. Knight a4 probably, because we don't really want to go back.
No many options. dc4 might be possible.
Bishop b7,
of course. Bishop a6.
Yeah, all of these moves are very playable. Yeah.
Let's once again ask Judge Dredd. Yeah, Judge Dredd likes both dc4 and bishop a6 and bishop b7, always giving a small black advantage, but nothing significant, so it doesn't mean all that much because it's such a mess. And let's ask him about b takes c3.
It likes knight b8, at least at first try, which is somewhat curious.
Yeah, it gives some weird lines. Now it's come around to queen e4. Some stuff like this. But
if white has to play this, he is worse.
Yeah,
there's absolutely no question. He is worse because his proud center has been sort of destroyed. He will have three pawns for the piece, but it generally isn't enough unless you have direct play somewhere. And his king is also quite weakened by the lack of the f2 pawn and the pawn on g4. So yeah, bc3 and knight b8. It looked weird at first, but if white has no easy way of dealing with a simple threat of knight takes c6, then it's definitely one of the top options for black.
And to praise your chess expertise, this is the main line of the engine takes knight to a6, which we all looked at, when it gives black a pretty significant advantage, actually.
No, but once again, it has to be prefaced by the fact that we're not really letting the engine run for any kind of serious.
No, I just switch it on. Whenever I talk about Judge Dredd, that means I switch on the engine. Now, I'm switching it off again with a very heavy heart.
Yeah, very important decision for Magnus here, and he seemingly has less than 40 minutes left, and it's only move 16, so he does need to settle on something here reasonably fast, because it's unlikely to be the last big decision he has to face in this game. And
then again, if he can work all this out and figures out he's better after b takes c3, the game becomes easier after a couple more force moves.
Sure.
Let's do a brief tour and go on our, I believe, first break. We forgot to take breaks. Tomaszewski Adams, we've sort of ignored because it's this sort of boring but very solid Carlsbad Queen's Gambit exchange structure. They've done what we talked about.
Although significantly, Mickey just refused the repetition of moves, which, rook c1, rook c7 has been seen in the game, knight b5, rook c8, knight c3.
The thing about these positions, they always look nice for white at first sight, until you've played a couple of games and then you start looking for a plan here. After g4, you always get hit by h5, queen h4, and the rook comes back.
Yeah, if you play
e4 never works, like normally.
Yeah, takes, they sometimes takes on b3 and start attacking the d4 pawn.
Yeah, there's always stuff happening, like, I don't know, if c5 or...
Maybe not in
queen
this
d6
immediate position, but
whatever.
the pawn on d4 becomes weak, and the bishop on d3 doesn't do a particularly good job of protecting it.
Yeah.
But as I said, somewhat significantly, after rook c1, black played rook c7, white played knight b5, forcing the rook back, went back to c3, and Mickey, instead of repeating, went for a6 here.
Yeah.
Which could either signify that he is not happy with the repetition, or I think more likely that he didn't believe Tomaszewski was going to repeat and felt that a6 is a more useful move than rook c7.
Also, psychologically, it's nice to keep your opponent guessing. I also don't think Mickey would mind a draw here, but to show, you know what, you can't just repeat once and then hope to gain some time on my expense. I'm going to play something else. Yeah, these positions... I'm stuck here with what to do with white. As I said, they look nice, but if you can't get any of these things in, now a3, b4 is also no longer realistic. It's very hard to come up with a plan, and at some point when it's well timed, often after rook c7, rook c8, black will play c5.
Occasionally black does play c5. And before our first break, let's briefly show the Wei Yi game, because I think it might be nearing some kind of a close.
We'll show all the games. We'll play our favorite game, 4 seconds Svidler evaluation. Wei Yi against Wesley, so...
Pieces will come off, all of the pieces will come off very soon. Seems like just a draw, because I don't think you can not play rook takes d4, and then black just takes on e5. And probably the entire queen side is about to disappear after takes rook d6. Maybe black is actually slightly better here after rook e2. Well, here he is definitely better, because he will end up being an extra pawn up in the endgame. Okay. So black is very comfortable here, and white perhaps needs to be careful. And Compton is out. Life is pain.
Do you make a straight out of Compton reference?
No.
Sorry. All I heard is Compton.
I like Nick Compton, but he's having a horrible series after the good first test.
We live in very different worlds.
I'm aware of that, yeah.
Nick Compton, straight out of Compton. Not the same thing.
No.
Anyway, Mamedyarov, Hu Yifan, a5, b5, which looks like a concession, but...
The knight on c8 is... You would like to place it on d6, not b6, but freeing the bishop on d6 is not that easy. The pawn on a5 is constantly hanging. Yeah, I would maybe try to play rook e8 here, because if black is allowed to play bishop c5, he'll be very, very happy, or she'll be very, very happy, actually. But knight a4, at least, force white to play knight a4 before playing b6 is what I mean. Because knight a4, once we play b6, it's somewhat misplaced. Although then it might go to b2 and c4, so it's not really that stupid of a move. Yeah, black seems to be very, very solid, but the knight on c8 is passive. If he plays it on b6, it really does nothing very much there. And white obviously visually has much more space, so I probably take white here. White is a pawn up. Expert analysis, no?
You can do it again.
White is a pawn. But here, actually, black has very, very good compensation. I like rook takes e5. We completely ignored this move, but I quite like it.
Was that legal? I didn't see that as a legal move.
Yeah, I very much like this decision. We had other stuff to talk about, but I noticed Sergei played this, and I thought, yeah, it was stupid of us to ignore it. Because I think black gets an improved version compared to what we were discussing.
Counterplay.
Yeah. We discussed this. I think black is fine. And
Was that everything? Was
pretty
that
pretty
the whole
much,
tour?
yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much. And Dieter seemingly is still thinking after e5 knight takes e5.
Maybe,
So,
I'm not sure.
yeah. So yeah, and we like black here as well.
Thank you guys for watching. Take the break to scan the learn section, look for Peter Svidler videos on the Grunfeld. That's always a fun pastime. And
12 hours.
It's 12 hours.
They will never come back.
12 hours of fun chess. We'll be right back. See you soon. the camera just click on to LCD. You want to get started?
We live?
Yeah.
Hello everyone. I'm waiting for Jan to do his turn at the coffee machine, and in the meantime, we have some developments in the Eljanov Magnus Carlsen game. So let's look at that. The position on the screen we've discussed with Jan before all of this was played, but the players are headed towards probably the position we had on the board some 15 minutes ago. It feels to me like black should challenge the queen on e4 immediately, because if white is allowed to play something like knight e5 here or g4, g5, it will be later almost impossible to win back this pawn on c6. And playing knight b8 and then not winning the pawn on c6 feels a bit inconsistent. So I expect Magnus to play f5, g takes, e takes, and in this position there is queen d5 check, which is something we briefly discussed with Jan on stream. There's also various moves white can make with the queen to e3, g3, followed by, after knight takes e6, some kind of a forcing move, knight e5, knight g5, all those kinds of options. But none of this looks particularly attractive, and Magnus does play f5, g takes f5, as you can see on your screen, and no coffee. How is there no coffee?
That coffee machine is my worst enemy. Like, I really don't like it. I'll take an extensive course in how to refill it, because you get 2 cups and it asks for fresh water. Still looks to me like you need an actual screwdriver to open the water tank.
You don't need to open the water tank. You replace it.
There is, yeah. I can't reach it.
You can, and I've done it yesterday. No, seriously. Some people are just completely.
The problem is, yeah, I can't do the show without you. So we're coffee-less until the next break.
No, I should probably just go and get coffee.
Get us coffee. Okay.
Half joking. Yeah, let's see.
I'll make some dumb jokes.
Yeah, let's see if Jan can make any sense of this position. This is a really weird pawn structure.
I feel like I'm not contributing. If you have to get the coffee as well and do the chess analysis, like.
But you are switching between the cartoons.
That doesn't make me feel much better about myself. Thanks for trying. This is on the board as we expertly predicted a long time ago.
Yeah, we had this on the board. I'm very happy about our predictions for this game. Rook c1, probably knight c7, knight e5 seems like a natural continuation from here. And after knight e5, I cheated a little bit in the break, and Machine likes knight b5 here, but it still is a huge mess regardless of what you do. Objectively, black is probably doing quite well here, but it's not impossible to imagine a set of circumstances where white will suddenly feel quite happy about his position. He does have a very promising group of pawns reasonably far up the board.
Yeah, something's gone wrong for Eljanov, and it's not so clear which once again shows what a clever guy Mr. Carlsen is, because I don't know.
He forces you to take important decisions very early, and people do tend to make mistakes in unfamiliar situations when faced, in particular when facing Magnus, because
this g4 looked very clever, but it's also a huge positional commitment.
Yeah,
and b5 was just a very strong one.
Yeah, b5 I was particularly impressed with how fast and how confidently he played b5, because it really isn't such an obvious move in this position. You do understand you want to challenge the white center, but it is a pawn sacrifice, and there are quieter moves available to black.
Yeah, impressive stuff from Magnus as usual. Looks like he caught fire in the tournament in general. He started slowly with, 4 draws?
4 draws, yeah, and he seems to have a decent chance today of winning a 3rd in a row, and if he does that, he will most likely, let's bring that up, but the likelihood is he will be tied for first with Fabiano on, no, I don't mean the standings, I mean the Caruana Dingleren game.
Ah, okay. Mm-hmm.
This is a somewhat saner position, so I feel safe leaving it in your hands and going to fight the coffee machine if you want.
Once again, Thanks for trying, but you're not making me feel better about myself for not trusting me with the Magnus position, and barely with this one.
Okay,
I'll count pawns. Can you count the pawns for me before you leave? White a pawn up?
seems so. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure, but it does seem like it's 7 against 6.
We need coffee. I shall try my very
Okay.
best to explain why white is a pawn up, because he took one earlier, and I'm still not 100% sure how big his chances for victory are, because black managed to consolidate somewhat, get his rook out here, gain some space, and the white pawns, if he can't manage to create a passed pawn, which isn't obvious how to do it, aren't all that impressive. They're a little broken up on the king side. Looks like you're never in time to prepare c4, because dc3 is always there. So I do believe that Ding Liren, after running into Caruana's very impressive home preparation, this new idea, knight h4, c4, knight f5, has done a pretty good job hanging around, hanging in there, and getting a position that is defensible or defendable. Like, I never know which one is correct. Defensible with defendable means? Defendable with defensible means? Anyway, I believe Ding Liren has pretty decent drawing chances here and has done a very good job staying in the game. One game where Wesley So, I don't think he had to do such a good job. I think he did a great job at home preparing the open Spanish as a surprise weapon to confuse or surprise Wei Yi, and he has zero problems whatsoever. We're in a rook endgame with 5 against 5, which tends to indicate a draw. Black is slightly better because the white pawns are broken up and the white king is potentially cut off from getting to the queen side, but I cannot believe this series. Winning chances here, it's very hard to target the b3 pawn. White's gonna go king f3 and then pretty much do nothing. So this looks like it's headed for a draw, which would be, I believe, Wei Yi's 7th draw in a row. He's played exciting games yesterday. He was on the verge of defeat against Hu Yifan, but managed to defend very well, confuse the issue after the time controller move 40 and get his draw. But today he had to scramble to equalize with the white piece against Wesley So, which is not a dream scenario. Looks like he managed though, and he's going to get his draw. In the Tomaszewski against Michael Adams game, both guys probably not thrilled about how their tournament is going. Adams uncharacteristically lost 3 games out of his first 6, is the tail ender, 1.5 out of 6, I believe, against Tomaszewski, who's on -1 or -2. Let me bring up the standings. Where are they? Here? Yeah. Let's have a look. Yeah, Tomaszewski on 2 out of 6, Adams on 1.5 out of 6. Both guys probably not thrilled, to put it mildly, but still gotta play the game. It's a long tournament, 13 rounds. Adams went for knight to c4, which I'm not sure if I'm surprised by it. If you can get this in and nothing too bad happens to you, it's a decent move. And bishop takes c4, d takes c4, knight to d2. Looks like a principled reaction, but I'm not really sure if white is in time to defend everything here. c4 is under attack, but black could, for example, go for queen g5, targeting e3 and g2, and it looks a little awkward. Might have been interesting as well, but Tomaszewski decided to believe Adams and just keep the status quo going. Knight f4, defending e3, when this knight has made it to his ideal destination in these Carlsbad structures. Whenever you can put a knight on d6 in the structure, you're very happy to do it, because it covers so many important squares. c4, e4, f5, all kinds of things. And for white it's still hard, even though his position is optically very pleasant, to do anything great. There we are. I should probably bring up the board. See you leave, and I'm doing a little blindfold monologue.
Okay.
I'm sure people are yelling at me in the chat. Apologies about that. I need Peter around to tell me, you don't have the board, you idiot. I was explaining how this knight on d6 is a pretty good piece, and therefore Adams did very well to bring it here.
Yeah, that generally is a better square than b6.
I was wondering, maybe you can tell at a glance, if you take here knight d2, I wasn't quite sure what's going on.
I'd be tempted as white.
Yeah.
I think any structure change is interesting for white here because the structure as it stands right now, I think, is very, very balanced.
I was curious about this, and I couldn't calculate anything. Maybe it's
Knight
just
f4,
fine for black.
just you sort of ignore it.
Can't I go bishop f5?
Oh no, I forgot about bishop f5. Sorry. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't want to go knight e4.
Anyway, we should probably believe both of these guys that there was something for black, and therefore you shouldn't take. But now with the knight on d6, black made another micro improvement, and he's just.
Yeah,
safe.
it seems like this is a reasonably safe position for black. Yeah. Sometimes they try to play for mate here, but I think it's done more with the queen on a4 than with the queen on c5.
Is
I mean,
it
on
stream
c2.
down? Stream is down. We gotta restart. Sad. See you guys soon. So sad.